Hello, sorry I've been away for the past couple of weeks. I've been on holiday in Mexico for the past 2 weeks. As you can tell, lots of sun and also lots of tequila, which was very much needed. But anyway, I'm back. And I thought, what best video idea to do next than to delve into the frightening and scary world of booktok. I have so many TikTok books that I want to talk about, because even though some booktok recommendations are quite horrific, there's actually some gems that are hidden amongst all the dirt. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the booktok recommendations that I've read, what I've rated them out of 5 stars, and if they're actually worth reading. I've done all the hard work for you, so you know what to avoid and what to pick up. And I'll be talking about these books in order of what I rated them. This video is definitely going to be the first part of many, so if you're new here, hi, I'm Katerina, welcome to the channel, and okie dokie, let's get into it. The very first book on my list is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And starting off strong, I gave this book 1 star. This book is a contemporary romance novel that follows a young woman who is a biology PhD student. And she ends up fake dating her lecturer to prove to her best friend that she's over her ex and back on the dating scene. The couple navigate through their struggles and worries whilst trying to keep up the facade. It's the classic enemies to lovers trope. All that aside, I have no other way of describing this book other than saying that it's literally published Star Wars fan fiction. And the author didn't really even bother to hide this. Like, look at that cover. That is literally Kylo Ren and Rey. And the man's name in the book is Adam. Need I say more? The hype for this book on TikTok, I literally saw the cover of this book recommended more than I saw my own family at one point. And let me tell you, I have never read a book that has cringed me out so much as this one. There were moments where I read a line that was so awful that I literally physically had to put the book down and take a breather before I picked it up to carry on reading. I literally needed God's strength to finish this book. And aside from the cringy and pretty much borderline unrealistic plot, there was no romance in this novel for about 300 pages. I literally felt like Oliver Twist being like, please sir, give me something to work with here. And then literally right at the end of the book, there's just this most ridiculous, intense Pornhub style sex scene that just comes out of nowhere. And even with all that aside, I felt like the author was trying to win like woke points by saying some really icky and cringy things at some point. Like, there's a line in it that's literally like, oh, you need to be as confident as a mediocre white man. And whilst I fully agree with that sentiment, I do find it a little bit cringy to read in a book when I feel like lines like that should just exist on Twitter. I don't know what TikTok was thinking when it was recommending this book, but stay safe because this isn't for me. The next book on my list is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which is part of the Folk of the Air series. And I rated this book, or trilogy, 2.5 stars. Maybe looking back on it now, I'd even give it 2 stars, to be honest. Maybe I just gave myself the extra half star for finishing the book. This is a young adult fantasy novel set in the world of fairy, and the story follows a human girl who, along with her sisters, were kidnapped to this world when a fairy general comes and murders their parents. Wholesome start. And due to being a mortal in this world, she faces discrimination and cruelty, and she therefore joins political intrigues in order to prove herself in the fairy court. However, she becomes entangled with the kingdom's prince, who, spoiler alert, is pretty wicked and cruel. Their relationship twists and turns, forming a central part of the story, filled with manipulation, betrayal, and unexpected alliances. Again, the hype on this series deluded me into thinking it was going to be great, but I just found it very average. Like, I read this book over a year ago, but if someone put a gun to my head and was like, quick, tell me some plots in the book, tell my family I love them, because I generally could not remember anything from this book. It was just so forgettable. Firstly, I didn't really like any of the characters. The protagonist herself was really one-dimensional and predictable, so you never really got to see any development, growth, or internal conflicts with her. And then in turn, it made the story feel really boring, because nothing ever really then felt like a surprise. And the prince was just generally a bit of a dickhead, and I didn't really understand why she fell for him. And trust me, I'm the biggest fan when it comes to enemies to lovers tropes, but this book just wasn't it. Which brings me to the romantic dynamics of the book. Like with most things on booktok, I feel like the readers like mystical porn, and I think this book is actually branded like that, but I'm just gonna say it was very vanilla. Not even vanilla, it felt really stale. And you're probably thinking, oh well, there must be action-packed scenes. But no, there wasn't, and the pacing was super slow because most of the book just revolved around conversations that people were having with each other. The only things that really stopped me rating this book only 1 star is that I did like the world-building aspects of it. I always find that such a fun part to read in fantasy books, to see like how the society and people work in this like magical realm. And I also really did like the themes that were explored, such as power, ambition, identity, and the complexity of morality. But apart from that, it was a pretty forgettable book, and I think that your life would probably be better if you didn't waste time reading it. The third book on my list is If We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I gave this book 3 stars. This is a young adult mystery novel that revolves around a really rich and privileged family who spend their summers on their private island. And the story follows the eldest granddaughter in the family, who is part of a group called Liars compiled of her cousins and friends. And whilst they enjoy the luxuries of this grand, extravagant family estate, they're all grappling with their personal struggles and familial expectations, including our main character, who tries to remember details of her past summer but can't because she suffered a really traumatic brain injury. However, in trying to recover her memories, she uncovers some dark secrets and buried truths about her family and their idyllic summer paradise. This book was okay. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I did find the mystery of it quite engaging, like I personally didn't know where it was going to be leading to. And I do remember feeling quite invested because I did want to know what happened. Because you do find yourself trying to piece the puzzle together yourself. And I did also like the book for tackling some interesting themes such as family dynamics, privilege, identity, and rich families keeping secrets. And also just slating the upper class in general. It was giving Saltburn to me, in that I wish that was me, but it's not, so I'm going to pray for these people's downfall instead. However, there were aspects I wasn't really a fan of. The characters didn't really do it for me. I did find that all of them pretty much lacked depth. Like, I felt there was never enough context or background about any of them, so I wasn't really that engaged with them and therefore didn't really care when they had like stuff going on. And honestly, I felt like this book had so much potential with the premise, but I just felt like the ending was super underwhelming. Like, I knew this book did have a plot twist at the end because of what TikTok said, but then when I read the ending, I was like, is that it? That's the plot twist? Seriously? Maybe this book would have blown my mind at like 12, 13 years old, but now it just fell a little flat to me. The next book on my list is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and I gave this book 3 stars. This book is, and I'm not really even exaggerating when I say this, a very, very emotionally and deeply harrowing book that follows 4 guys who've just graduated college, and it spans over their whole lives as they essentially try to navigate adulthood whilst living in New York. The story actually centers around one character in particular who has been through a very traumatic past, and the novel focuses on how his past impacts his present, especially regarding relationships. It explores themes of trauma, abuse, friendship, love, and the search for identity, as well as exploring the extent for human suffering and resilience. I did like this book, which feels a bit weird saying given what the content is about. I really loved how in-depth the author fleshed out all the characters. You'll not only get all their backstories, but you really understand the ins and outs of all their personalities, and therefore you can follow and understand why they do and say certain things. And ultimately you really connect with them and form an attachment with them. I did anyway, like I felt like I knew them by the end. And in terms of the plot, I liked the way how it spanned over many years, so you could basically see them grow. And I did think it had some good plot twists that kept you on your feet and sort of working out what may happen next. However, the content for me just, and I'm really struggling to find the right word for this, but it just kind of felt unnecessary. I've heard people describe this book as trauma porn because of just the sheer amount of really terrible things that happen in it. And it's described as a very difficult read because it literally leaves people dry heaving. And I'll be honest, it's not because the content or what the characters go through is horrific. Like, I don't know, like I read American Psycho and I generally felt like that was more horrific to read than this book in terms of like really raw and graphic descriptions. But the sheer amount of bad things that happen just kind of felt a bit over the top and too much by the end. And it's a big book, like it's over 700 pages, so it's a lot of sad content to go through, which can get quite tiring. And don't get me wrong, I love sad books. I adore any sort of literature that makes me feel something or brings me to tears. But this just felt like it was unnecessary, and I was just like, ugh, not again, when I was reading certain aspects of the book. I don't know, some people really enjoyed it and said that it's an amazing read, but I don't know, like I liked it, but it just wasn't that amazing for me. The next book on my list is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica, and I gave this book 3 stars. This is a Spanish novel that's set in a world where an infectious virus is born, which makes all animal meat poisonous to humans that consume it. Governments then legalize eating human meat as a replacement, what they call special meat, what you and I call cannibalism. And the story follows a man who works in the butchering business at a local slaughterhouse. And one day he's given a live specimen as a gift to eat, but little by little he begins to treat her like a human, which is illegal. I was super invested in the plot of this book. I thought it was such a cool and original idea. And I loved how it was essentially an allegory for living in a really capitalist and consumerist society, where the masses have to suffer just so the ones on top can reap the benefits. In this case, the metaphorical representation of this social injustice is that millions have to die just so that the lucky few can enjoy the luxury of eating meat. I also thought the world building was really good. Like, I could totally imagine a world where this could potentially be a possibility for society. Like, we've seen how people act in a pandemic. I'm not putting this idea past us. But like the others that I've rated 3 stars, I liked it, but I didn't love it. It started off really strong, but as soon as the main character was given this human, the plot just kind of went downhill after that. And I think it's because I was really invested in the social commentary at the start. Like, it felt super dystopian, very Hunger Games, like I was lapping that up. And then the narrative shifts where his whole world is just very much revolved around this girl. And the ending does have a bit of a plot twist. I think it's meant to add shock value, but even now I can't really tell if I enjoyed the ending or not. Maybe if I'm sure about it, maybe it's a no. I know some people didn't like this book because they found it too gory. I personally don't really mind gore, and I didn't really see this as a problem. I mean, look at the title and the cover, you know what you're going to get yourself into. But I would still actually recommend this book to read because I do think it was a really unique plot and had some really original ideas in it, but I kind of just wish that it was a little bit fleshed out more. The 6th book on my list is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This novel is essentially about a girl who lives in New York City and she's struggling with the grief and depression following the death of her parents. She attempts to escape the ills of the world and she attempts to erase her identity by sleeping for 1 whole year, a sort of extended hibernation. Whilst this sounds like an incredibly depressing novel, it's actually quite funny. Ottessa Moshfegh has this really unique and amazing ability to write these really bizarre and witty characters, which is why I just love any sort of work she produces. Nothing really major happened in terms of plot, but the book is very character heavy and the main character is super perceptive of herself and also when perceiving those around her. We love a self-aware queen. And I also found it to be a bit of a satire of rich white privileged girls living in New York City, which made it more fun. And I think since reading it, someone did actually tell me that it is meant to be a satire of New York pre 9/11, which actually does make a lot of sense. I read reviews from a lot of people saying that they found the main character really annoying, but I think if you know that it's a satire and go into it knowing that it is a bit of a joke, then I think you find it a lot more enjoyable. The only reason I didn't give this book 5 stars is because the main character does touch upon grief and depression, but she kind of just glosses over it and doesn't really go into much detail, which I kind of wanted more of because I feel like it would help explain her identity more and the reason why she does things. But at the same time, this may be just a character trait of hers, and the reason why she doesn't go into things just speaks volumes about who she is. But this is a book I actually would agree on TikTok that absolutely slaps, and I think it is definitely getting the recognition that it deserves. And the very final book on my list is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I gave this book 5 stars. This is a literary mystery novel that follows 6 classic students who study at a small but elite liberal arts college. The story is narrated by one of the students who retells the circumstances and everlasting effects of the murder of one of their friends. The book explores themes of friendship, loyalty, guilt, obsession, and the blurred lines between right and wrong. This book is literally the Bible of dark academia. If you see any dark academia book recommendations on TikTok, you can bet that this book will always be in there. And to be honest, it's probably one of my favorite books of all time, and I adore it for so many reasons. It has this incredibly lush and rich prose. The author's writing is just full of beauty, depth, and sophistication. Her writing style is so immersive and descriptive that at times I actually forgot that I was reading a book and not actually there with the characters. And with the characters, they're so unique and complex with their own personalities, motivations, and flaws, that when they face moral dilemmas, you're just as conflicted as they are. The plot is also super engaging. Like, every time I read it, I'm honestly just gripped with suspense about what's going to happen next. And I love the fact that this was written in the 90s. Like, it just has this very nostalgic feel to it. I could honestly go on hours how much I love this book. It's genuinely one of my favorites. And I actually read this book before it gains popularity on TikTok, but I'm not mad because it is a gorgeous book, and I'm just glad that people are talking about it and giving it the hype it deserves. Because I genuinely think that everyone should read it. So if we have TikTok creators yapping about this book, then that makes me more than happy to know that that book is getting more love and recognition. And those are the books of recommendations I want to discuss for this video. As I said, I have a lot of books I want to talk about that I've seen have gained popularity on TikTok, so this will definitely be part one of many. Did you agree with any of the thoughts I had, or did you think differently? Let me know your opinions in the comments below. I genuinely do find it really fascinating reading other people's opinions on books that I've read. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like down below. It really helps my channel channel out and other people can listen to me yap about books. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I make new videos every Tuesday and you can then watch my other videos I make on this series. Feel free to also follow me on my Instagram. I post a little more personal stuff on there, but I also post about books as soon as I finish reading them, so you see what I can rate them out of 10 and what they're about. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!